Greetings, friends, and welcome back to the Musings from the Mount podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Carenza. In this episode, we begin to consider that maybe we've been thinking about the nature of questions and answers all wrong. What if we're not supposed to be looking for answers out there, outside of us, but rather recognizing that when the universe makes the call, we become the response. We are the answer to the universe's question. With this context in mind, we tackled this crucial difference between being smart and being wise. And it's like how intelligence might help you navigate life, but wisdom only really emerges when you apply knowledge through the heart. We also touch on some beautiful wisdom about living your way into answers rather than trying to think your way there. And hopefully this conversation may shift how you approach problem solving and decision making in your own life. We hope you enjoy it. And if you do enjoy this podcast, please consider going to meditationmount.org and donating. Your donation, it helps us to bring you this podcast as well as all the other programs the Mount produces both today and in the future. We're incredibly grateful and honored by your support. Okay, back to the podcast and the call-response nature of the universe. Just moments before we started recording, you said something interesting. You were saying, "Thank goodness for music," and how playing the guitar every day is very therapeutic for you. And we were talking also about answers, questions, answers, and it brought me to the call and response of music.
Right.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we get confused. We're always looking for answers. And sometimes we don't realize that maybe we are the answer. We're the response. The universe makes the call, and we're the response.
Yes. I mean, that's the typical statement. I need an answer. I want an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you go back to the Bible, ask and you shall receive, knock and the door shall be opened. Invocation, evocation. We have to do the initiating.
Mm-hmm.
And then the universe responds. And the other thing is that the answer is always in response to a question.
Mm.
So I remember when I was working with companies and helping them come to an understanding of their vision and how they're going to please their customers and all the rest of the stuff that you do in corporate America. We would always start by saying, the most important thing we have to establish today is not some fancy mission statement, but it is what is the real question we're seeking to answer today?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we don't establish that, we'll come up with 1,000 brilliant ways of describing an inappropriate or an unhelpful question. So for me, the question is the quest.
Mm.
I know it's a play on words in English, but if you look at quest and question,
Mm-hmm.
the quest is the search for truth, the search for answers. So a question is an ion of quest. Now, what's an ion? Well, if an ion classically, if you look it up, it's an atom or a group of atoms that has a charge to it, either positive or negative. So it's really like a quantum of energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's the energy that allows us to go on this quest. I know it works in English, it's a play on words, but for me, it gave me an insight into why is the question so powerful? Because it launches into space, this search engine.
Right.
We are the search engine, but as you hinted at, we're also the answering service.
Mm-hmm.
We are the answering.
Yeah.
So when I realized that in order to get the answers, I have to initiate the quest and realize that the process of my life and your life, our lives, is in fact how life answers itself and gives us the answer. What is an answer? An answer is an understanding of something. Now, do we want just the information as understanding, or do we want understanding as deep knowing?
Right. Yeah, the difference between just data and understanding.
Yeah, and we've touched on this before, the difference between being smart and being wise.
Right.
And where we said that, you can be smart, which is really your IQ, it's your street smarts. It's how you navigate through life based on your intelligence. And the shift from being smart to being wise is when you understand that being wise is lovingly applying the knowledge that you have in service to the common good. So wisdom is how the heart takes what the mind knows and makes it useful for everyone. So that's, we've mentioned that before, but for me, that the whole thing of the distinction between being smart and being wise is really important, because it really reminds us that unless we bring in the heart, if we only look at the mind, then we're in danger of missing out on how things are really answered.
Yeah, because it's a paradigm shift in how you approach problem solving, or just how you approach the synthesis of information.
Well, yeah, because you go back to, it's a synthesis. The mind, the higher mind, the intuitive mind, is synthetic. It pulls things together and gives you the whole picture.
Right.
The lower mental mind has a function, but its function is to analyze and dissect. You can't use the lower mind to get a synthetic picture.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. So you can, for instance, I'll give you an example I used when I was teaching at a garden school at the Findhorn Foundation in Scotland. We looked at how do you bring something to life? How do you reveal the promise of life? Well, of course, in the garden school, we're working with seeds. And so what I did, I held up this seed and said, well, inside of this seed, and whether this was a carrot seed or whatever else was living inside it, we could tell by what was on the packet. I said, how do you know what's inside this? Can your mind understand it? And I said, your mind is like this sharp instrument that can dissect and cut into things. I said, here. And I took out my gardening knife and I cut the seed in half. And I said, look, it's a lie. There's nothing inside. There is no promise. It's all a lie. It's all this, fuzzy hope and faith, and It's not real. It's not scientific. I've just taken a knife. I've just cut the seed open. There's nothing inside, but there's more matter, more stuff. But we know through the process of gardening that which is the promise inside can only be shown by being sown and grown. That's the key. So if I say that my intellect is a sharp instrument that can analyze, it has its use, but don't expect it to reveal the truth. That's done by placing ourselves inside the heart and experiencing life through the heart and through the mind placed in the heart. That's my understanding. So I know we sort of launched straight into this.
Yeah.
And one of the things that touched me yesterday when I was contemplating this whole thing of call and response, question and answer, was the poets throughout the ages have attempted to articulate this. And I came across a poem by Robert Browning I'd like to just read, because it started this whole process in me, which has led to this particular podcast theme. So this is what Robert Browning wrote. Truth is within ourselves. It takes no rise from outward things, whate'er you may believe. There is an inmost center in us all, where truth abides in fullness, and around, wall upon wall, the gross flesh hems it in, this perfect, clear perception which is truth. A baffling and perverting carnal mesh binds it and makes all error, and to know rather consists in opening out a way whence the imprisoned splendor may escape, than in effecting entry for a light supposed to be without. So basically he's saying what all the scholars have known for years, that education, educare, means to draw from within, to lead from within, and to reveal that which is on the inside. That's the quest, is to reveal the mystery. Then where does the mystery live? In the heart of who we are. How do we access it? By living the question. And that brings me to a very famous quote that probably many people have come across before, which is Rainer Maria Rilke in his Letters to a Young Poet, and where he said, don't search for the answers, which could not be given to you now because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday, far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer. That, for me, is some of the wisest words I've come across.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very apt. It's also interesting, too, that we're sort of drifting towards a removal of actual living of life, where it's become virtual, instead of getting your hands dirty. There's that Neruda quote, I'm going to mess it up, but, he's like, when you, what basically saying when you gardening or when you're working the soil, do you do it with gloves or with bare hands?
Well, I used to do it with bare hands and bare feet.
Mm-hmm.
That was the gift of the old farmer that I learned organic farming from in the early 1970s in Sweden. There was a group of us that came from Stockholm, and we wanted to learn this technique because this guy was the last person in this whole area who knew this traditional farming method that had been there for 500 or 600 years, and it was called friendly farming. And he greeted us. And he looked at us and he said, take your shoes off, take your socks off, go walk on the ground, go walk on the earth.
Yeah.
Unless you are in contact with the living earth, you can't be part of the gardening process. And he would walk bare feet. Now, in the winter, he would wear clogs, in the snow, because this is Sweden, it got cold in the winter. But during the summer, everyone was barefoot.
That's very interesting. There's so much scientific data now coming out about grounding and earthing.
It's grounding and earthing, but also you then become part of the circulation. Mm-hmm. If I wear rubber boots, I've insulated myself from the electrical circuitry of the planet.
That's right.
So he was basically saying, get plugged in, guys. You've been walking on concrete for years. You've been inside a city.
Yeah.
Take off the insulation and reconnect. And
that's pretty much an encapsulation of the difference between, thinking and then thinking with the heart.
Exactly.
That's you're really putting yourself into the equation,
If I just think with the mind and I act from the mind, I'm not always in empathetic rapport with the consequences of my actions. With my heart, I know what I'm doing. I know deeply why I'm doing it and how it may affect others. Therefore, that's a filter. It's called discernment.
Yeah, I think that's also what makes us human, is the capacity to do that. An animal can make a purely instinctual or almost mathematical equation. Danger, must eat. Must procreate. But we have the ability to both run those two systems at the same time and find the balance between them.
Well, it goes back to what is unique about the human experience. And we've talked about this momentous of occasion that the ageless wisdom talks about 18 million years ago, when this fire of the self-reflective mind entered into the animal human. And the difference, as you've just said, that the animal knows, but the human knows that it knows.
Right.
And when you know that you know with your heart as well, then that's wisdom. And then you show up as a force for good, not some savage that is out to kill everything and everyone in its path. Therefore, the evolution of consciousness can only happen through a self-reflective mechanism, where there's an outside, there's an inside, where temporarily you're cut off from the two being one, and you see yourself as it, and out there is that.
Right.
It's a me against the world. It's I am that. And therefore, self-reflective consciousness allows us to say, oh, yeah, I know that I know. However, when I know that I know with compassion, then all I can do is that which is kind and helpful and true.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot harm another if I know I'm connected, which is why we use this principle of unanimity here at Meditation Mount, is that once we understand we are interwoven into this seamless web of life, there's no way we would harm ourselves because we harm everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes against the natural tendency, although the mind cut off from connection, a heartfelt connection, will do automatic things.
Mm.
It will be prompted by reflexes that don't go through the heart filter,
Right.
don't go through right discernment,
Yeah.
which is one of the noble paths that the Buddha talked about, is right discernment.
Yeah, we as humans we have a tendency to revert to automatic patterns,
Yeah.
especially in times of stress or in times of um, difficulty.
Yes. So I guess what we're looking at is the whole mystery of the revelation of truth
Mm-hmm.
through a lived experience. But we're also talking about the heart and the mind, and where we've arrived at this point in our evolution as a society and a civilization, that if we don't put the heart as the container for everything and place the mind inside the heart, we are not going to fulfill the promise that lives in the heart of who we are.
Mm.
What we will fulfill is all the things that are surfacing in our mind. Think of it, intelligence and smartness. If we just use those elements of information, they can supercharge our patterns. They can supercharge what I would call our personality predilections. But they don't bring us true satisfaction, because true satisfaction is when what we do serves our highest good and serves the highest good of the whole. And for this, the heart is indispensable. There is no way you can serve the good of the whole without the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it becomes heartless. Heartless action is what we're seeing on the planet at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Today we just learned about 3 young children being stabbed to death in the south of England at a
Mm-hmm.
dance studio.
Yeah.
Now, these acts happen all the time around the world, and they are just the product of not just a deranged mind, but a disconnected person.
Yeah.
A totally disconnected and open to influence.
Mm-hmm.
Not influence from the goodness of the heart,
Right.
but influence from trauma, from patterns, unresolved aspects of self, unresolved aspects of society that look for the easiest solution. I'm not saying this in an absolutely judgmental way, but it does reflect that most of the movies and most of the TV shows that we all grew up with, the solution was to pull out a gun and shoot somebody.
Yeah. That's true.
Let's not beat around the bush, as they
Yeah.
say, which is another violent metaphor.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting that we, on one hand, we've spent the last 100 years of visual medium, television, movies, saying, here's how you solve these problems. This is what you do in this situation, and then bemoaning the fact that that's what people are doing.
It's because we haven't understood that at the heart of who we are is a deep mystery. Whether you call it the generative mystery, the essential truth of who we are, our sovereign self. It's one of the principles we work with here at Meditation Mount. We name unanimity. The other one is goodwill, which is that love is that which flows through the universe and connects all things. The other principle is essential divinity, that says inside of each aspect of creation, there is a spark of the Creator. And this is what the mystics throughout the ages have been pointing to But we don't have to go back into the Middle Ages. We can go back to somebody like Thomas Merton. And, there's a beautiful quote from his book, Conjectures of a Guilty Bystander, which I think is a fantastic...
That's a great phrase.
Yes. He said, "At the center of our being is a point of nothingness, which is untouched by sin and by illusion, a point of pure truth, a point or spark, which belongs entirely to God, which is never at our disposal, from which God disposes our lives, which is inaccessible to the fantasies of our own mind or the brutalities of our own will. This little point of nothingness and of absolute poverty is the pure glory of God in us. It is like a pure diamond blazing with the invisible light of heaven. It is in everybody. And if we could see it, we would see these billions of points of light coming together in the face and blaze of a sun that would make all the darkness and cruelty of life vanish completely. I have no program for seeing this. It is only given. But the gate of heaven is everywhere."
Oh,
Now,
wow.
he's talking about something we've named before, is inside of us are these two aspects of the Creator, God transcendent and God immanent. It goes back to that quote we've often used from the Bhagavad Gita, "Having pervaded the universe with a fragment of myself, I remain." So we are life discovering itself. We are life on a quest. We are the question of life answering itself. And that's the beauty of this self-reflective consciousness. It gives us, together with the heart, the ability to know in the deepest possible way, beyond data. Data can lead to information, but information only leads to wisdom through the heart.
Yeah. Yeah, I just thinking about that over and over again, just, thinking about that situation with those children. And so the universe asks this question, how are you going to respond? What are you going to do? And you have almost an animalistic response. You think about you want revenge or you want justice, and then the heart has to ask the question, well, how do we break this cycle? How do we make this so that whatever trauma informed this decision, informed this action, isn't perpetuated? And that's the real difference between just because you can't always make that knee-jerk decision.
But that's why the heart has to be involved as
Yeah.
the core decision maker that uses the information from the mind.
Yeah.
If it's just, hey, this is what happened to me and this is my response, it's revenge. Revenge perpetuates, as you say.
Yeah.
And what we want to perpetuate is the power of love that underlines all things. Revenge and hate cut that circulation of love.
Yeah.
And the whole planet becomes a bloody mess.
And it is hard to wrap your head around, like how, there's like why do these children have to die? Why do you get wrapped up in those why questions, and realizing that it's not a matter of fair, it's not a matter of black and white.
And also, you hear talk show hosts, particularly there's a number on the British television who are anti-God. And they say, well, look, if there was a God, why did he allow this to happen? And what you and I have been saying is how life is revealed is through this classroom, where we learn what it means to have responsibility for the power of life that lives inside us.
Yeah.
Therefore, when something happens like this that is shocking, it reveals to us the consequences of a heartless act. It's a heartless act. There is no rationale or reason.
Yeah.
And therefore, rather than arguing whether God exists or not, because that's futile, what we're saying is, what if we are the instrument by which life learns to know by answering the questions it has to pose? I don't receive anything unless I ask.
All right.
Unless I pose the question, and if I set on a quest, I'm not going to find the Holy Grail. I mean, that's the whole, all
Right.
the legends are like that. Passover. It
Yeah.
isn't like you sit at home and you order it online with Amazon Prime and, oh, here comes the Holy Grail. We've always wanted one of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got it cheap. It's great.
Yeah. That is one thing I'm a little, I don't want to, I'm generally a techno optimist, but the call to adventure seems to be not ringing as loudly as it used to. I know when I was younger, the call to adventure was so strong. I couldn't resist it. And I mean, it was, and I don't necessarily see that being the case now.
Well, see, adventure for a lot of people, and once again, I'm not knocking anything, would be video games because you're going on this quest.
Sure.
There are video games with the name Quest inside it, so
Right.
we know that. But what you don't get is the lived experience of the soil on your hands and on your feet. It doesn't register. The whole object of incarnation is to have the truth live through experience in our heart, our mind, and our blood and our bones.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to put a fine point, I had to go all around the world to understand what my hometown, and just you get a completely different view on it. I think about this a lot. The time I've spent touring in other countries, and you could, there's that cliche, the ugly American, and then, but when you go there, and you realize, oh, I'm being an ugly American, and then you go through the whole process of, oh, it's our way is the right way, and then you go home and you see, oh, hey, maybe it's not, or and you eventually you split the difference somehow, but you and it's like the triangle. You raise yourself to a higher point, and you kind of like take the best of both worlds.
So here's a one-liner, William Butler Yeats, okay. We taste and feel and see the truth. We do not reason ourselves into it.
Yeah.
We taste and feel and see the truth. We do not reason ourselves into it. He's basically saying, hey, it's got to be born through you.
Yeah.
And we go back to the heart. I don't think we'll ever have an episode where the heart is not mentioned because it's central. And we've used the Agni Yoga teachings and quotes about the heart, and we've used it from the Ageless Wisdom teachings. I'd like to just remind us of what Black Elk said about the heart being the center of all life. These are his words, Black Elk. I am blind and do not see the things of this world. But when the light comes from above, it enlightens my heart, and I can see, for the eye of my heart sees everything, and through this vision, I can help my people. The heart is a sanctuary at the center of which there is a little space, wherein the Great Spirit dwells, and this is the eye, the E-Y-E. This is the eye of the Great Spirit by which he sees all things, and through which we see him. If the heart is not pure, the Great Spirit cannot be seen. I mean, it's so basic. You'll see it popping up anytime somebody has this dynamic, major aha moment. It's registered as a truth. And so when Black Elk speaks, or Yeats or Browning speak from a lived experience, we go, yeah, we resonate with it. We say, yeah, that rings true. It rings true. Not that data corresponds with the data I'm holding in my data bank.
Yeah. And I think it's so, it used to be poetry, but now it definitely in song, when there's a lyric that just reverberates through your body as the truth, you understand it. Well, some songs you're just like, oh, that's nice, but other songs really move you in that, because that it encapsulates a universal truth,
Yes, because it really is poetry put to music.
Right.
That really is what it is.
But when I find I was thinking too, this is a scary concept, I think, for a lot of people, this idea of, because we attach ourselves and identify ourselves so much with our intellect as humans, and there's a large amount of fear that goes into answering with the heart. I mean, like it's almost it's counterintuitive sometimes.
Because the intellect has really given us such an amazing instrument to see things differently. However, the problem becomes great when we identify with the intellect as who we are, not as what we have in order to understand who we are. So if the intellect becomes who I am and my IQ, and I've got a bigger IQ than you, I don't care about your IQ. I want to know about the goodness of your heart. I'll measure that by your smile. I'll measure that by the warmth coming out of you. I'll measure that by how you behave and how you treat other people. So the intellect has reached, if you like, its zenith. It's been perfected to a point where we have to put it inside the total circuitry of our being. It can't be the only tool we reach for every time. Otherwise, if it's a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. The intellect, when it is placed in the hands of the heart, is an instrument of enlightenment.
Yeah, because it takes the heart to hold that element of faith, because the answer might not be clear cut in the data from one step. It's that thing where you're looking 3, 4, 5, 6 moves ahead of time, and you have to have faith that you'll get there. And the heart can hold that space in a way sometimes the mind can't, because with the mind you get to the second or third step and the data still isn't showing what you want it to show, so you just give up. Like, oh well, this is not a good endeavor. We're wasting money. We're wasting time, resources, not realizing that the magic happens on the 4th, 5th, and 6th step.
Well, yeah, that's the alchemical process. You just you repeat it, but you repeat the experiment, but each time with a heightened awareness. And then at some point, your heightened awareness precipitates through the experiment and creates the gold.
Right.
It isn't like, well, why didn't it happen the first time we did it? Why did it happen on 999? Well, because on 999, the way you were going out about your experiment allowed the gold to reveal itself. You didn't manipulate the atoms to make the gold. You were part of the answering of the question of how do I find gold?
Right. Yeah, and that really does bring it back to living the answers. We are.
Well, and it isn't just the alchemists of the Middle Ages and the mystics. You go back into China and Lao Tzu, and let me just find this. Here's something that I found just very enlightening from Lao Tzu. It's a little long, but let me read it. Why scurry about looking for truth? It vibrates in everything and every not thing, right off the tip of your nose. Can you be still and see it in the mountain, the pine tree, yourself? Don't imagine that you'll discover it by accumulating more knowledge. Knowledge creates doubt, and doubt makes you ravenous for more knowledge. You can't get full eating this way. The wise person dines on something more subtle. He eats the understanding that the named was born from the unnamed, that all being flows from the non-being, that the describable world emanates from an indescribable source. He finds this subtle truth inside his own self and becomes completely content. So who can be still and watch the chess game of the world? The foolish are always making impulsive moves, but the wise know that victory and defeat are decided with something more subtle. They see that something perfect exists before any move is made. This subtle perfection deteriorates when artificial actions are taken, so be content not to disturb the peace. Remain quiet. Discover the harmony in your own being. Embrace it. If you can do this, you will gain everything and the world will become healthy again. If you can't, you will be lost in the shadows forever. Our dear friend Lao Tzu.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Now that wasn't just, he had some idea.
Yeah.
This It's like he's just transmitting his lived understanding of something.
Yeah, that's an amazing summation, because that's the whole thing. That's the whole. I mean, that's the whole game right there. I mean, and there's just the eating part alone. If you just take that, you're right. Like you can never get full. But the only way you can get full is by eating less. It's a counterintuitive.
Well, that's
thing.
why when we talk about humanity facing this huge test, this huge initiation, to see if we can cross over into a heart-centered place, it's called the initiation, where we learn that humanity or man cannot live by bread alone.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about our source of nourishment comes from the lifeblood of love that circulates through the heart.
Mm.
That's the only way to be satiated and to feed others. How do you feed the hungry?
Mm.
Well, what is hunger? Hunger is the absence of nourishment, whether that be physical food, emotional food, but in this case, on the planet at the moment, it's the absence of empathy, compassion, and love based on kinship with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We go back to a theme that we've touched on a number of times in the last couple of years, is that the reason we have to go through this ourselves and go through the experiences of having hard times and difficult times is that so we can give birth to our own wisdom. Unless I have my own aha moment, knowing doesn't come alive in me. If you have an experience in life where you are transformed, I can follow you as a follower and you're as my teacher. But your experience can only inspire me to have my own experience of that truth. If I don't have it, all I'm doing is adopting your children. I'm not giving birth to the child of my own wisdom. And that's the whole purpose of having a self-reflective mind and a heart.
Right.
We go back to Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. I mean, yeah, you need a heart, you need a mind,
Mm-hmm.
you need courage.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the initiate's way too. You have to embody all those things, and it's it's interesting how when you do start going down that path, how you do eat less, metaphorically.
Right, and we had Professor Wade Chumney on our podcast recently, talking about business ethics and AI, but he was also talking about Plato's cave and the shadows on the wall of Plato's cave. The way to dispel the shadows on the wall of Plato's cave is to generate the light of illumination that comes out of a lived experience that is fully known through the heart mind. That dispels the shadows. That destroys the darkness.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, so that self-illumination, it brightens the entire room, so to speak.
One thing I'm very aware of at the moment, Joey, looking around, not just the political landscape, but in general, because people go online, we surf the net, we go on our phones all the time, we're always looking for information. We're being informed by what others tell us. And yet, if we go back to the Buddha, at some point, we have to use right discernment. We have to choose what is right and wrong. And unless we think for ourselves with the heart in mind, or with the mind in heart, we can't utilize right discernment, because discernment is the heart in mind, or the mind in heart. And if we don't utilize discernment, we cannot separate right from wrong from an ethical perspective. Therefore, we can't live in integrity. So if we look to others for our inner awakening of reason, we're just going to the local circus and buying snake oil again. I mean, it's the traveling medicine show, man.
Yeah.
So I want to read something from, there was a German woman who was born in 1906 and died in 1975. She's a historian and philosopher. Her name was Hannah Arendt Arendt. Arendt. And this is what she said. And it's a sort of, it's a little chilling because it's very reminiscent of what's going on now.
Mm.
And she's talking about untruth and what's not real. This constant lying is not aimed at making the people believe a lie, but at ensuring that no one believes anything anymore. A people that can no longer distinguish between truth and lies cannot distinguish between right and wrong. And such a people, deprived of the power to think and judge, is, without knowing and willing it, completely subjected to the rule of lies. With such a people, you can do whatever you want. She grew up through the Third Reich.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we're seeing these shadows, these same shadows, on the Plato's cave of our current walled-in society.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an awful lot of, theater happening, and then it seems like that's a skill that has largely been lost, the ability to sift between the signal and the noise, on a very basic level.
Yeah, she's basically saying that unless we do the choosing, and the choosing has to come from not just information and intellect, but from the heart. Because then we're creating a society that is ethical, that is full of integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And I go back to the Buddha's last sermon, Joey. We've covered this a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
There was a paragraph that for a while just mystified me. Because I thought we were going towards group endeavor. And he basically, one of the paragraphs in his last sermon says, "Those who either now or after I am dead shall be a lamp unto themselves, relying on themselves only and not relying upon any external help, but holding fast to the truth as their lamp and seeking their salvation in the truth alone, shall not look for assistance to anyone besides themselves. It is they, Ananda, among my bhikshus, who shall reach the very topmost height, but they must be anxious to learn." So he's basically saying, you got to do it by yourself. And I'm going, no, just a minute. I thought we were doing this together.
That is a good question.
But when I really understood what he's saying is that in order for me to join with you, it's the heart of who I am has to join with the heart of who you are. Therefore, the truth has to be born out of my own point of light that is me. It doesn't mean I have to go separate. It means it's born. I have to rely on my own sovereignty because I am a fractal of the one life. I am the microcosm of the macrocosm. And what I do is I awaken that point of knowing. I awaken that point of beingness and awareness. I realize something. I become self-realized. So the Buddha's not saying, don't worry about being in community. He's just saying, no, you can't use community as a crutch to not do the work yourself. Because the whole, as far as I understand it, the whole point of us being here together in different bodies, although part of the one soul of humanity, is so that the one life can shine through every point of its manifold self.
Yeah, you have to be able to stand independently before you can stand together.
And there is a phrase in the spiritual teachings that talks about a state of consciousness of isolated unity.
Right. Of course. Of course there is. That makes perfect sense. That's isolated unity.
So we started this conversation about questions and answers. And it's absolutely natural. I remember when my children were growing up and I watched it in my grandchildren. Why? Why is this? Why is this? And then you go, oh, God, And then I used to say, because.
Right.
Why, Grandpa? Because. But what I'm saying is not because and saying, I'm not going to give you a reason. Because this was what was caused by what we set in motion.
Yeah.
Because.
Yeah.
The root word, meaning of the word because it was caused by. So why? be caused by.
Right.
Now, if you want to understand how it can be different, choose a different response. And if you want a different response, maybe you employ the agency of the heart to help you.
It's help you ask a different question. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because unless you are on a quest
Mm.
and asking the question, you are not going to get the answer. The answer is not going to live inside of you. I mean, we go back to what Rilke said. Let's just sort of say what he said in Letters to a Young Poet. Don't search for the answers which could not be given to you now. Basically, you wouldn't know, they wouldn't make sense because you would not be able to live them.
Mm.
And the point is to live everything, live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday, far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer.
Mm.
So it goes back to what we were talking about. We are the response of life to itself. We are not just the answer, we're the answering, but we are also the question.
I can see that reflected in my own life. I mean, that's been the pattern. You always come up with that. I wish I had known then what I know now,
Right.
but I wouldn't have been able to have those experiences if I knew that. And I look back, especially some of the more embarrassing or more like
Right.
times when you didn't act skillfully, and I have to remind people of this all the time. How do you become skillful? First you have to be unskillful, and then you have to learn through trial and error and failure how to hone that skill. So, a skilled technician is someone that has made all the mistakes and learned from them.
Right, because mistakes is just the classroom in which we learn what works.
Yeah.
Now we take it personally.
Yeah.
then we're going to cover up all our mistakes.
Right.
And that was the big thing in corporate America. Dr. Deming, who Americans didn't recognize, but he went to Japan. The Japanese adopted him, and he was the father of the Toyota production system and the whole continuous quality improvement methodology. He came up with 14 different sort of rules or guidelines. One of them was removing fear out of the workplace, because if you have fear in the workplace, you will not acknowledge you made a mistake because of the fear of retribution.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I worked inside a major aerospace company, where if somebody screwed up, it wasn't okay to say, this is what I just did, until they decided to try and change the culture and say, if you make a mistake, let us know, because this is a learning opportunity for us all. Mm-hmm. However, still, people were still graded and paid and given bonuses for being good. Mm-hmm. So right. Mistakes were still subconsciously seen as bad. Oh, that person screwed up, they can't be very good. Mm-hmm. Now, unfortunately, that is no longer in place in this particular company, and they've screwed up royally by suppressing the truth, as we've seen with certain airplane accidents, aircraft accidents recently.
Or people stranded on a space station.
People stranded on a space station. But I'm not pointing fingers.
No
I'm
fingers.
Just saying that this is how we learn. Mm. We learn by seeing what is revealed by our choices. If we choose to act a certain way, let's observe the consequences of our actions. And then we can say, that wasn't beneficial either to me or to the people around me or to the planet as a whole. Let's make an adjustment. Therefore, you make adjustments to correct. Correcting to what? Correcting to do something that is at the heart of everything, which is to serve the good of the whole. Mm. Now, when we're still serving just the stakeholders and the shareholders and the people that own the company, the good of the whole is going to be down the list. That's why the current economic capitalistic model, I'm saying this from a place of reflection, is flawed, is broken. Mm-hmm. There are some good parts to it, but basically it is not run by the heart. Mm-hmm. It's run by a calculating mind.
Right, and doesn't allow for there to be space in the middle. Like, doesn't allow for both competition and compassion. We need to have both.
Well, and I would say this when I was in the corporate setting. How about having competition? Who can come up with the best way of making the air purer or the oceans less polluted? Let's compete in this way. Who can come up? And then, not just, well, we did it, we are the winners, but who can come up with the ways in which we can do this together? That's the next. So we are one. The business of humanity is the business of working together in love for the good of the whole. It's not the business of making a profit from each other.
Yeah. Which, that's one thing I love about the open source movement, is that it sort of embodies that. And there are people out there who are open sourcing their patents and saying, instead of trying to keep this closed, we're gonna just open source this stuff and hopefully we can make something great out of it.
Well, maybe we can't find the answers to life unless we have this open sourced approach using the collective heart of humanity. Yeah, maybe that's the secret to opening the door to the next level of health and wholeness on our planet, Joey.
And I believe that's kind of where we're heading. I think we're going to see that, with the explosion as AI moves itself into every aspect of our lives. There's going to be a time very soon where I think, I think right now this subject of this podcast might actually seem kind of vague and kind of pie in the sky. But I think over the next, and I'm not talking like the distant future, I'm just talking over the next year or two, we're going to see a radically different world than the one we're living in right now. And we're going to need to start thinking about things like compassion and action.
There is a fork in the road.
Absolutely.
If the heart is not employed and we go down the fork that is just the mind, it is a dark and desolate and dystopian place we'll end up in.
Like a purely utilitarian, like there's no compassion.
There's no heart.
Yeah.
With the heart, what we do is we're able to expand, not just have empathy for other beings, but we're able to realize we're part of something greater. When we realize that we're part of something greater, the power of that greater something can work through us as a beneficent force. It's not just us against the world. We are the world. Yeah. We are the answer. But in order to know that we are the answer, we have to ask the right question and we have to dare to live the question. Go back to Rilke. Dare to live the question.
That's right. All right. Thank you, Michael. That was good.
Thank you, Joey.
Dare to live it. All right. All right. We'll see you next week.
Okay.
All right.